we're going to do some baking. We're going to do a traditional Lenten bun. By the time this goes out, it'll be post Shrove Tuesday, Pancake Day, Mardi Gras, Fat Tuesday, right? But these cakes now, traditionally, whereas they'd only been eaten on that day, they've now been sort of like, they've not been, it's now accepted that they will be eaten all the way up to Easter, normally on a Tuesday, right? So what I'm going to start by doing is I've just got one egg in here and I'm just going to beat it up, and we're going to use half of this in making our bun and the other half will be for doing a bit of glazing. So these Lenten buns are known as Semla, which is the singular, Semlor, the plural. Okay, so for that you're going to need some yeast. Now you can need fresh yeast, 25 grams, or 12 grams of dried yeast. I've got dried yeast. 8 grams of butter, 250 mils of milk, whole milk that you got warmed up, 40 grams of caster sugar, half a teaspoon of salt, a teaspoon of baking powder, like I say, half an egg to go in the mixture, 2 teaspoons of ground cardamom. Now flour, anything from 300 to 400 grams of plain white bread flour. Come to why there's a discrepancy in a minute. And then, like I say, you're going to need half an egg when we come to bake them, just to coat them. So let's make some Semlor. So I'm going to do this in the stand mixer, so I've got my dough hook in there, and I'm just actually going to take that out for a second. What I'm going to put in here is about half of my flour, okay, just to initially get it going. The reason I said 300 to 400 grams is because we want the dough at the right consistency. We want it just slightly sticky. You don't want it too far, too much flour in it, otherwise the buns come out very dry. Okay, I'm going to add the sugar, baking powder, the salt, the cardamom, and then the melted butter. Get that out of the way. And then what I'm going to do is, before I add the final couple of bits, I'm just going to put my dough hook in. Excuse me. And now, where's my milk? So my milk, I'm going to add the milk in. Okay, I've just had that warming up a little bit. And the yeast. And then I'm just going to get all that mixed together before I add half of my egg. So a little bit of mixing going on there. I'm going to add about half of that egg. I think a little bit more than half egg went in. Might have to beat another egg later. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to mix that and then gradually start adding the flour in. And like I say, we want it to be just a little bit sticky. Once we've got to that, we're going to just leave it to run for 5 minutes, knead it, okay? And then we're going to need to obviously let it rise. Okay, so I'm going to get blending in some of that flour. So that's having its 5 minutes knead at the moment. Okay, I'll put it on the kneading setting. And so I thought I'd just tell you a little bit more about what these buns are. These are cardamom scented buns, hence the 2 teaspoons of cardamom that's gone into it. And like I say, it was originally a Swedish thing. It was originally baked for pistachio, which was Shrove Tuesday. It was a sort of a bread bun that was filled with almond paste. We're deviating a little bit with that one. And whipped cream. Okay. However, when the Reformation came along, they said sort of like, you know, we shouldn't be doing this strict fasting for Lent. So as a result, the Semla, which at that time actually wasn't quite the same thing as what we're baking, it was more of a bread bun in a bowl of warm milk, it became a traditional Tuesday dessert from Shrove Tuesday all the way through to Easter. And you can now buy Semlors in the shops, okay? Essentially some places all the way from Christmas up until Easter. Your average Swede has about 4 to 5 of these Semlors every year, in addition to any they might make at home. Okay, what you won't find though is Semlor buns sold in the shops outside of that season. So that's a little bit about what they are. Okay, they you do find them not just in Sweden but throughout Scandinavia. They go slightly different names. So there's Semlor in the north. There's my pronunciation is probably absolute crap. Faslagsbulla or something like that, which meant Fat Tuesday roll in the south, and Hetvag or Hetvag, if you had it in a bowl of warm milk, like I say, sprinkled with cinnamon. The actual name comes from a German word, Semmel, which actually came from a Latin word, similar, or simila, I might have got that one, which was the Latin word for flour, that actually seems to have come from the Greek word semidalis, which was a name for the finest quality wheat flour, or semolina. So that's where the name came from. So I've got a little bit more to tell you, but we're going to leave this, and like I say, when the kneading is done, we're just going to cover it over and let it rise for between 30 and 40 minutes. So our dough is nicely risen. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to get it out of here, and we're just going to knock it back a little bit. Give it a little bit of a gentle kneading. So it's quite sticky, okay, but not overly so. And now what we're going to do is we're going to divide this into 12. And when we've got our 12, we'll roll them into a nice ball, and we're just going to place them on the baking tray, nicely well spaced out. Okay, so I've got 2 trays here, 6 on each, and we can then just let them rise for about another 25 to 30 minutes. So there we have our 12, 6 per tray, rolled out, and now, like I say, we're now just going to leave these for about 30 odd minutes just to rise again. So before that's up, you need to put your oven on. Okay, we're going to bake them in the oven at about 200. Okay, but obviously we want to give them that egg wash first. When we put them in the oven, we're going to need to be careful, keep an eye on them. They do tend to burn very quickly. They probably will only take about 8 to 10 minutes. Okay, but when we're ready to put them in the oven, do the egg wash, I'll just catch up with you. But when they come out the oven, we need to cover them with a dampish tea towel, because otherwise they'll form a crust, and we don't want these being crusty buns. So they've had time to rise now, so what we're going to do is, like I said, we're going to give them a nice egg wash all over the top surface. Now these Semlars, or sorry, Semlors, Semla is single, are a bit notorious in history. The King Adolf Frederick, he was very partial to them, and on Fat Tuesday in 1771 he had 14 helpings of his Semlor and died. Now it's highly unlikely it was the 14 helpings of these things. It probably was the fact that before he gorged himself on those 14, he'd also stuffed his face full of lobster, sauerkraut, caviar, smoked herring, loads of champagne, and then he decided he fancied a dessert. But yeah, it killed him. So that went down in history as being sort of like, oh, you know, the deadly dessert. Now I said to you about the early ones were just these buns soaked in, well, not soaked, they were sat in like a bowl of hot milk or warm milk. Later they added the almond paste. Now we're going to use pistachio. Now although that's not traditional, nowadays it is something that is quite often used. Well, not often, but is sometimes used. Okay, so we're going to be stuffing them using some of that. Okay, but I'll tell you a little bit more about that. So like I say, before I tell you anything more, we're going to put these in the oven about 8 to 10 minutes. Keep an eye on them. We don't want them burning. Okay, and then as soon as they're out of the oven, while they're cooling, and we need them cool completely before we can do the filling, as it were, we're going to cover them with a dampish tea towel, because like I say, we don't want them crusting over. So that's them had about 11 minutes these got in the end, and you can, oh, that was hot. You can see, let's use a damp tea cloth, see, sorry. You can see they are starting to brown a little bit too much in a couple of places. They've also split. Ideally we don't want that happening. And now all we're going to do is let these cool completely, because we need to be able to take the tops off and take some of the crumb mixture out, and then we're going to put in what would have been traditionally, well, it would have been from 1833, a almond paste. Prior to then, that was a bit wow. Like I say, it was just really a bun like this that was in a dish of warm milk. But in 1833 is the first recorded record of someone adding some almond paste, and after World War One is when it suddenly became a bit common to find them with cream filling. And supposedly this comes from a baker who, celebrating the end of rationing, decided to be a bit lavish. End of the war, end of rationing, and so he decided that he was going to splash out, and he filled his Semlor with whipped cream. So that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be putting in a pistachio paste, okay, which we're going to make up from bun crumbs and pistachio paste that I've already got, and possibly a little touch of cream into that. We'll see what the consistency is like, and then topping that with some whipped cream with a hint of sugar and vanilla in it, and then we put the top back on, and that will be our finished Semla. So like I say, these have got to cool completely. I've got them covered. So I've got 500 mils of whipping cream there. I've got 100 grams of pistachio paste weighed out. I've got a little bit of cream in case I need to put that in the paste. I've got my vanilla extract, icing sugar for decoration, some almonds for decoration, and I just need a teaspoon of caster sugar to go into the cream. But for now, we've just got to let these cool. So these have cooled now, and what I'm doing now is about a centimetre and a half from the top. I'm just slicing off a lid, if you like, and then what we do is, into this bowl where I've placed the pistachio or almond paste, we pick out crumbs to form a little well. So we're taking out about a third of the bun, okay, and I'm going to do this for each one, and then we're going to make up a filling that we will spoon back into that. So I'm just going to get the rest of these lids off, decrumbed, and we'll make up the filling. So that's mixing in the crumbs into the paste, but it's a bit stiff and we want it a little bit more spoonable than that. So I'm just going to add some cream, so I can make it a little bit more runny than this. I think pretty much told you everything to know about the old Semlor and their sort of history and tradition, if you like. Like I said, the oldest form of it was just a bun they had in a bowl of warm milk, and in Swedish that was the hetvag or hetvag. Not really sure how to pronounce the Swedish, but in Middle Low German, because sort of German's a bit different, you know. I don't know about if you'd say it's regional, although there is apparently accents very regional. I had a friend who studied German at university, went off for his sandwich year, went to an area of Germany. He struggled to understand him at all. His German was fine. It was just simply the accent was so different from anything he had ever sort of come across before. He struggled to understand what was being said. So in Middle Low German, it was a Hetwagen, which means hot wedges, and in sort of like just German, if you like, it was a Heißwecken, which meant hot bun. Even though these aren't necessarily hot, but if you put them obviously in more warm milk, presumably straight from the oven, then they are. Right, so you can see now we're getting a little bit more of a spoonable mixture. So what I'm going to do is then just going to add a little bit more, make it a little bit more runny. We're then going to move that top and spoon some of this inside each one. Now we're going to be putting a topping on that, okay, with some whipped cream, but we'll come to that in a second. So like I say, I've got about 500 mils of whipping sugar or double cream, or whipping cream. I'm adding a teaspoon of sugar. Now if you've got vanilla sugar, which I haven't, then you could add a teaspoon of vanilla sugar. I'm just going to add a little touch of vanilla extract. Let's get that out of the way. And now what we're going to do is we're going to just whip this up until this is thick enough that we can pipe it. Now I've got a piping bag ready there with a large sort of star nozzle. So I'm just going to get this whipped. So as you can see, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a layer of cream on top, and then we just place the lid back on top, sitting on top, so obviously we can see the cream. It's unfortunate this lid split on that one. So once I've done that, I'm just going to finish off, just decorate them lightly, but that is essentially it. Now I was going to sprinkle a few little bits of almond on there, but quite frankly I don't see the point. They're just going to fall straight off. I can't, unless I go around sticking them into the cream. There's not much I can do about that. But all I'm going to do is just give them a light dusting all over with some icing sugar. And that is your finished Scandinavian Lent bun, otherwise known as a Semla or Semlor. So I'm going to try one of them later with a cup of tea, I think. Actually I won't, because I don't normally drink a lot of tea. I might have it with a cup of coffee. But there we go. Semlor.